Good evening, everyone. You're watching L24 Nightly News. I'm your host, Mariam Zian, and here are your top stories. The United States launches attacks on Iraq and Syria in retaliation for a deadly attack in Jordan that killed 3 U.S. troops. The Zionist occupation committed 13 massacres against families in the Gaza Strip, killing 112 martyrs and leaving 148 people injured in the past 24 hours. Next, Algeria submits a draft resolution to the UN Security Council to demand an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza following the ICJ's orders to Israel. And the United States expresses its regret over the decisions by the Mali Transitional Military Council to renounce the Peace and Reconciliation Pact that resulted from the Algiers process. The details after the break. Hello and welcome again to the program. We start with the latest news as 3 U.S. officials said the United States started carrying out retaliatory strikes on Friday in Iraq and Syria after a deadly attack in Jordan that killed 3 U.S. troops and injured some 40 others. Syrian state media said on Friday that a U.S. aggression on a number of sites in Syria's desert areas and the Syrian and Iraqi borders resulted in a number of casualties and injuries. Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza said the Zionist occupation committed 13 massacres against families in the Gaza Strip, killing 112 martyrs and leaving 148 injured during the past 24 hours. The same source added that the number of victims of the occupation aggression on the Gaza Strip has risen to more than 27,000 martyrs. 66,000 others have been injured since last October 7th. In Khan Yunis, south of the Gaza Strip, 3 Palestinians were martyred and 3 others injured as Zionist occupation forces fired upon the Palestine Red Crescent Society building. The building housing thousands of displaced people faced continuous sniper fire, hindering the transfer of casualties to Al Amal Hospital. UNICEF's top spokesman in Palestine said Friday the UN organization estimates that 17,000 children in Gaza are unaccompanied or separated from their families. Jonathan Cricks also underlined that after nearly 4 months of relentless attacks, all the children in Gaza are believed to need mental health support. According to the spokesman, UNICEF and its partners have provided mental health and psychological or psychosocial support to more than 40,000 children and 10,000 caregivers since the beginning of the conflict.
At least 17,000 children in the Gaza Strip are unaccompanied or separated. Each one has a heartbreaking story of loss and grief. This figure corresponds to 1% of the overall displaced population, 1.7 million people.
As the occupation army intensifies its assault on the Gaza Strip, Palestinian pregnant women endure tragic miscarriages during their forced exodus from the north to the south. The Palestinian Ministry of Health warns that approximately 60,000 pregnant women face life-threatening risks due to the absence of health care and the challenges in accessing hospitals. Hosam Barkan has the report.
The United Nations slogan, "No Excuse," in its 2023 campaign against violence towards women, did little to shield the women of Gaza from the brutalities inflicted by the occupation army during their compelled journey from northern to southern Gaza, seeking refuge from the massacres. Amidst forced displacement, death under bombardment, and profound loss, pregnant women in Gaza navigate through perilous days in a lengthy and grueling journey, marching alongside hundreds of thousands of displaced individuals toward the south to escape the ravages of war that have torn apart Gaza.
We moved on foot from the north to the checkpoint set up to pass through to the south. The journey was very long and tiring because I was pregnant and I had a previous surgery on my foot. But I could not stop because of fear and I did not pay attention to my bleeding. When I reached the checkpoint, I felt terrified. There were a lot of people tied up and naked. They were arrested.
The occupation army, employing internationally banned weapons, spares no cruelty in its quest to annihilate Gaza. Pregnant women emerge as the primary victim of this aggression, surpassing all boundaries of criminality.
We are certain that the weapons used against residents are ammunition that we were not previously accustomed to. They have caused disastrous health impacts, and among them is the increase in miscarriages. We receive women with miscarriages around the clock and constantly see pregnant women bleeding.
Al-Shifa Hospital unveiled yet another facade of suffering, portraying a catastrophic situation endured by the displaced. Particularly women who have lost husbands, sons, fathers, brothers, or even all of them together. The tragic journey of Gazan women from north to south stands as one of the most heart-wrenching episodes amid brutal aggression that spares not even the unborn in their mothers' wombs.
The UN said it will take decades and substantial international aid to rebuild the socio-economic conditions in the war-torn Gaza Strip to pre-conflict levels. The UN added that at best, even with the scenario that GDP could grow at 10% annually, it would still take Gaza's GDP per capita until 2035 to reach the pre-blockade level of 2006. Nabil Khazini reports.
Walking around Gaza, signs of poverty are running rampant. Life has dramatically changed here. In every corner of the enclave, scenes of deprivation are widespread. Several months into the war, tangible economic effects have begun to manifest, with key industries and companies realizing a considerable impact. This street in Gaza has become a hub for cobblers. They say that due to the collapse of the economic situation for people living in the Strip, Palestinians cannot even afford a new pair of shoes.
Before the war, we used to work less, but now we started working more because people don't have money to buy new slippers. New slippers that used to cost 15 shekels now cost 18 shekels. People's conditions is very bad, and there's no economy. It's very little.
The war launched by the occupation against Gaza caused social and economic shocks that is plunging hundreds of thousands of Palestinians into extreme poverty. There is a slim chance for a quick recovery of the economy in Gaza. The United Nations says it could take until the closing years of this century for Gaza's economy to return to its pre-conflict scale if hostilities in the Palestinian enclave stop immediately.
In the worst case scenario, we go back to what it was prior to October 2023. And there, in 16 years, Gaza grew by 1%. The average growth rate in Gaza was 0.4%. And if that's the conditions prevailing in the recovery, or after the war ends, or the military operation ends, it will take Gaza until 2092, or 7 decades, just for it to go back to its level of 2022.
Prior to the ongoing war staged by the occupation against Gaza, the Strip was already enduring dire socio-economic conditions. but the occupation offensive has exacerbated the decline to the highest levels.
Algeria has consistently supported the Palestinian cause through active diplomacy at the highest international level and through many actions, the last of which was the draft resolution it submitted to the UN Security Council to demand an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. Marwa Belaiwar.
Algerian solidarity with Palestine is neither idle words nor a mere slogan. Active diplomacy for a just cause, that is what Algeria is seeking, as it uses its influence on the international arena to help the Palestinian people achieve their legitimate rights and end their suffering. Following the UN Security Council session devoted to discussing the way to give binding effect to the International Court of Justice's provisional measures that order the so-called Israeli occupation to take action to prevent acts of genocide, even though it fell short of calling for an immediate ceasefire. Algeria has drafted the UN Security Council resolution to enforce an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza, sharing the draft with the 15 member countries. The draft resolution also provides for the rejection of the forced displacement of the Palestinian civilians, and again demands all parties to comply with the international law, and calls for full, rapid, safe, and unhindered humanitarian access into and throughout the entire Gaza Strip. It was not immediately known when Algeria's draft resolution would be put to a vote. Security Council members are in charge of examining the draft. However, Algeria's stance towards Palestine and all just causes remains a priority for Algiers, as well as a commitment throughout its tenure under the UN Security Council. And it is worth mentioning that the Palestinian issue remains a real concern for Algeria now and forever.
Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian on Thursday exchanged views on the latest developments in Gaza with the leaders of the Palestinian Islamic Hamas resistance movement and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad movement. In two separate phone calls, Amir-Abdollahian also discussed the proposed initiatives to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza and release prisoners during their talks. Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh said that while maintaining their unity and solidarity, the Palestinian resistance groups would consider the initiatives and plans only if the Palestinians' interests were safeguarded. Al-Qassam Brigades, the military wing of the Islamic resistance movement Hamas, announced on Friday evening that its fighters managed to kill 15 Zionist soldiers from a distance of 0 in the Jawazat area west of Gaza City. Al-Qassam also announced in a military statement the destruction of a Zionist troop carrier with a Yasin 105 missile in the same area. Al-Quds brigades have shown scenes of targeting a watchtower and gatherings of enemy soldiers behind dirt berms with machine guns east of Jabalia in the northern Gaza Strip. Let's take a look. The U.S. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller revealed ongoing discussions between the United States and Zionist authorities regarding cases of violence committed by settlers in the West Bank. In a press conference, Miller stated that American officials engaged in frank talks, raising specific incidents of settler violence and urgent measures to be taken against those involved. This announcement follows the recent imposition of sanctions by the U.S. administration on individuals within the Zionist entity, accusing them of participating in West Bank violence. The move signals growing American dissatisfaction with the policies of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his administration. In Michigan, hundreds protested during President Joe Biden's unannounced visit, denouncing his support for the Zionist war on Gaza. Demonstrators waved Palestinian flags, chanting slogans calling for Biden's resignation over his alleged involvement in the Gaza genocide.
I want him to know that 10,000 dead babies are on his hands. He has the blood of those babies on his hands. And I'm here with my 2 children, in solidarity with those kids.
We feel disappointed. We're, disgusted by how the Biden administration is handling the situation. They're continuing to be complicit in this genocide. They are requesting more money to send to Israel, $14 billion that they want to send to Israel to continue its war crimes on the Palestinian people.
Thousands rallied in Sana'a, Yemen, in the largest demonstration supporting Palestinians in condemning Zionist aggression in Gaza. Demonstrators called for a ceasefire, urging the entry of food and medicine to alleviate the humanitarian crisis. Yemeni officials expressed solidarity and condemned the siege on Gaza, emphasizing support for the Palestinian cause.
This popular gathering today comes in support of our brothers in Palestine and in solidarity with our brothers from the wounded Gaza, in victory over their oppression, and in confronting the tyranny and the siege imposed on them. Today, our Yemeni people are telling the world that they are continuing in their solidarity, congratulating all the operations that the Yemeni armed forces are taking in the Red Sea by targeting Israeli, American, and British ships. And we can say that if the aggression stops and the siege on Gaza is lifted, we will raise our hands from targeting these ships.
The Houthi group in Yemen said it targeted an unidentified British vessel in the Red Sea. Earlier on Thursday, the UK's Maritime Trade Operations Organization said that an explosion was reported at a distance off a vessel's starboard side, west of Yemen's Al Hudaydah. The organization said the vessel and crew members were reported safe. However, it was unclear whether it was the ship targeted by the Houthis. In other developments, Syrian news agency Sana said that air defenses on Friday responded to a Zionist aggression targeting points south of Damascus and shot down a number of hostile missiles. Quoting a Syrian military source, the agency reported that approximately at 4 a.m. on Friday, the Zionist enemy launched an airstrike from the direction of the occupied Syrian Golan, targeting a number of points of South Damascus. A day after the United States said that it was planning attacks on Iranian sites in Iraq and Syria, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi said his country will not start a war, but would respond strongly to anyone who tried to bully it. Some media reports suggested that Washington had approved plans for multi-day strikes in Iraq and Syria against multiple targets, including Iranian personnel and facilities in those countries.
We have said many times we will not initiate any war, but if anyone wants to bully, Iran will respond firmly.
Algerian Foreign Minister Mr. Ahmed Attaf was received by Tunisian President Kais Saied on Friday. Minister Attaf delivered a written letter that was sent by President Tebboune to his Tunisian counterpart while acting as a special envoy of Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune. An audience at the end of which Attaf underlined the interest in truly promoting Algerian-Tunisian relations at higher levels, stressing that his visit to Tunisia took place in the context of a very positive dynamic which marks Algerian-Tunisian relations. He also stressed that the two countries also aspire to strengthen political understanding with a view to exerting influence at the regional and international levels.
I carried to His Excellency a written message from his brother, President Abdelmajid Tebboune, who is very keen to constant communication and continuous coordination with his brother, President Kais Saied, as part of their relentless efforts to effectively enhancing Algerian-Tunisian relations to the highest possible levels, and to constantly opt for the best for our two brotherly countries and peoples, and the best for our region and our regional neighborhood. My visit today to Tunisia as a special envoy of President Abdelmajid Tebboune comes as part of a very positive, purposeful and beneficial dynamic that Algerian-Tunisian relations are witnessing.
تعيشها العلاقات الجزائرية التونسية.
The Algerian diplomacy chief, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, praised the significant strides achieved by Algeria and Tunisia during the last 4 years under the wide guidance of the leaders of the brotherly countries, President Abdelmajid Tebboune and his brother, President Kais Saied. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, held bilateral talks on Friday with his Tunisian counterpart, Nabil Ammar, as part of the working visit to Tunisia. During these discussions, which focused in particular on Algerian-Tunisian fraternal relations and cooperation, the two ministers reaffirmed their desire to continue strengthening coordination on different levels for regional peace and security. The United States expressed earlier its regret over the decision of the Transitional Military Council in the Republic of Mali to terminate the Peace and Reconciliation Agreement emerged from the Algerian path. In a briefing at the ministry's headquarters, the U.S. Department spokesman Matthew Miller said that the agreement would have provided more stability, emphasizing Washington's concern over the repercussions of the Military Council's move in Mali on the security and stability of the country and the entire region.
We regret the transition government's withdrawal from the Algiers Accord, which, if fully implemented, would have provided more stability for all Malians and the whole region. We remain concerned by the resumption of hostilities and the risk of returning to civil war among the signatory armed groups to the Algiers Accord and the transition government.
The representative of the Polisario Front in Spain, Mr. Abdullah Al-Arabi, confirmed that any investment in the occupied Sahrawi areas without the consent of the Sahrawi people is a violation of international law. This came in a letter sent by Abdullah Al-Arabi to the head of the senator group, Jose Maria Rosell Recasens, in which he expressed the Polisario Front's opposition to the planned hotel expansion in the occupied city of Dakhla. Members of the Spanish Senate called on Foreign Minister José Manuel Albaraz to ensure that the government of Pedro Sánchez adheres to the United Nations resolutions regarding the Western Sahara issue. During a hearing, members of the council accused Rabat of being behind the waves of illegal immigration across the Spanish coast and through flights to Madrid International Airport via Royal Air Maroc.
marroquíes que cumplen con su palabra. El motivo por el que hemos cambiado nuestra posición sobre el Sáhara.
What is the reason that we have changed our position on Western Sahara? I have changed it. Before we were with the United Nations, and now we are not with the United Nations. That letter from the unknown author but signed by the President of the government stands out as the most respectable, the most realistic, the most credible for the resolution of the conflict. The position that maintains Rabat, which is against the United Nations resolution. The Socialist group in the European Parliament, the Spanish section against the socialist criteria of the entire chamber, voted earlier against condemning Morocco for its human rights violations and attacks on the dignity of many European journalists, including some Spanish. But the Moroccan authorities have no hesitation when it comes to refraining from demanding Ceuta and Melilla. On the other hand, Rabat is behind the waves of illegal immigration on boats and flights to Madrid International Airport via Royal Air Maroc.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for tonight's program. Thanks for tuning in and have a good night.